Today's lesson is Chapter 8, Lesson 3, which can be found on pages 563 through 568. Our objective is I can generate equivalent fractions by writing a fraction in simplest form. Vocabulary is simplest form and equivalent fractions. Question 1. Divide the numerator and denominator until you have the number blank as a common factor. When simplifying fractions, whatever you do to the numerator, you must do to the blank.
Zoe just made a new playlist out of 30 songs. 6 of them are labeled alternative rock. That means 6 out of 30. What is this fraction in simplest form? Let's do it step by step. First step is to divide both the numerator and denominator by a common factor. Remember, if you do it to the top, you gotta do the same thing to the bottom. Since 6 and 30 are both even, you know that they are divisible by 2. Once we divide by 2, that leaves us with 3/15. Since 6 and 30, continue dividing by common factors until the numerator and denominator have only 1 as a common factor. Both 3 and 15 are divisible by 3, so if we divide the numerator and the denominator by 3, we're left with 1/5. We know this fraction is in simplest form because the only common factor between the numerator and denominator is 1. The simplest form of 6/30ths is 1/5. That means 1/5 of Zoe's playlist is alternative rock. I personally prefer something a bit more mellow, but you know Zoe, she likes to rock out. You can also find simplest form by using the GCF, or greatest common factor. Let's take that problem with Zoe's playlist, 6/30, again. Check it out. First, list the factors of the numerator and denominator. The factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. The factors of 30 are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 10. Then, identify the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is 6. Now, divide the numerator and denominator by the GCF. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 30 divided by 6 is 5. That makes 1/5. Either way you do it, the fraction of Zoe's playlist that is alternative rock is 1/5 in simplest form.
Alright, let's take a look at this in your book. I'm on page 563. So, like that video just said, we can use greatest common factor, like we did in the last lesson, to help us with simplest form. So here's a problem, and it says Angie has a vertical jump height of 12 inches. Holly has a vertical jump height of 22 inches. So, Angie's vertical jump is 12 22nds of the vertical jump of Holly. Write this fraction in simplest form. So, I can first list the factors of 12 and 22. So if I list all the factors of 12, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. If I list all the factors of 22, I have 1, 2, 11, and 22. So now I need to circle their greatest common factor, so the largest one they have in common, which in this case is 2. So the greatest common factor of 12 and 22 is 2. Now I need to divide both the numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor. So this results in an equivalent fraction. So the fraction will be equal to the fraction we started with. We're just simplifying it. So 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 22 divided by 2 is 11. So that's the simplest form because at this point, the only factor that 6 and 11 have in common is 1. So that's what they were talking about. The only factor they have in common is 1 here. So that's why we know it's the simplest form. So the greatest common factor of 6 and 11 is 1. So Angie's vertical jump is 6/11ths of Holly's vertical jump. And here is another part, and I'll show this on. You can shade it to check. So using models will help you because if you shade 12 out of 22, and then you draw the same 6 out of 11, you can see that they're the same amount shaded, so they're equivalent fractions. Okay, here's one last example on page 564. So this is where you can just divide the numerator and denominator by the same common factor, and you can continue dividing until you get it in the simplest form. So let's say we have 18/30. Well, I know those are both even, like our step-by-step showed us, so I can divide by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 30 divided by 2 is 15. Well, those are not our simplest form because they still can be divided down more. So we can divide each of those by 3 because 3 is a factor of 9 and it's a factor of 15. So if I divide each of these by 3, I would get 3/5. At this point, it is our simplest form because they once again have no common factors other than 1. So then we stop dividing. So in simplest form, it is 3/5. And there's a good helpful hint over here that tells you dividing the numerator and denominator by the same number is the same as dividing the fraction by 1. So it's an equivalent fraction. Okay, so question 1 I talked about in step 2 of the video we watched, and I talked about that on the problems as well. And answer both of these questions in the form, please.